in a world where our politics is so fraught, we need our corporate leaders to be able to step up and to demonstrate. And so that's where I think for Etsy, our individual mission is really important. But I also think showing that you can be a great business and a great citizen at the same time is critical.
One of the lessons I've learned in martial arts is that standing still is asking to be hit. If you stand still in business, your competition is going to catch up. I start each morning practicing martial arts because it brings me balance and focus. And I want to know how others stay motivated as well. So join me for conversations on business, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I'm Dan Schulman. Welcome to Never Stand Still. On today's episode of Never Stand Still, I'm joined by Josh Silverman, the CEO of Etsy. As an experienced entrepreneur and consumer technology expert, Josh established a name for himself as the co-founder and CEO of the popular social event planning site, Evite. Following the success of his first venture, Josh has gone on to lead as a top executive at eBay, American Express, and Skype. And where at Skype, he attracted 300 million new users, doubled revenues, and tripled profits. Not too bad, actually. As the CEO of Etsy, Josh is using his many experiences to carve out a unique space for the company in the competitive world of e-commerce. And I'm thrilled to have Josh here. Josh, welcome to Never Stand Still.
Great to be here.
Great to see you again. So Josh and I have known each other for a long time, and we've both been looking forward to this conversation. So Josh, let's start off with maybe a little bit about your background. In a lot of ways, we have similar backgrounds. We're both liberal arts majors, which is a rare thing in business. I even think you were a theater major. Is that right?
I tried to be a theater major, and I just wasn't good enough as an actor.
I was going to ask you to sort of give us an example of that. But and then you went to Brown, and then you went to Stanford for your MBA. I think you were class president there. I think I would have been rejected from both of those schools, by the way. But I'd love to understand, and I'm sure our audience would, this sort of liberal arts and then moving into the business world. How do you think that background helped to shape your career path?
Yeah. So I did start as a theater major, and I just wasn't good enough. So I am where I am in part because I was such an untalented actor. Right. I ended up in public policy, and I went, in my first job out of college, I worked for Bill Bradley, who was a senator from New Jersey at the time. And he was a great guy. He is a great guy. Yeah. Spent a couple of years working for him, which was a great privilege. And a couple of things about that. One, for me, sort of a through line of my whole career is just where do I think I can have a positive impact? And I thought at the time that government was a place to do that. Mm-hmm. And for me, I ended up finding that I could have more impact in the private sector. But one of the things that really taught me was, when you're preparing a senator for something, you've got to boil down any issue, national health reform, budget deficits, to one page. Yeah. What's the core issue? What's the pro? What's the con? And what's your recommendation? And that ability to take anything, no matter how complex, and get to the main thing, I have found to serve me really well in life. So it was really great training.
Yeah. I find the same thing as I don't really look for specialists per se. Sometimes on the engineering side, maybe, or on product side. But in general, I think the higher up you go inside a organization, whether it's on the nonprofit side or the for-profit side, being able to think about the issues, distill the issues, and then communicate and inspire is, our job, really.
So much of the job, I agree. The theater arts piece comes in because the ability to communicate well turns out to matter. When young people ask what they should do, when they ask for my advice coming out of school, if they're not technical, I'll often recommend to go into sales. Yeah. Because if you want to be a leader, you're always selling. You're selling employees on why they should come join you. You're selling the press on why they should cover you. You're selling customers on why they should believe in you and buy your product. Part of the job is the ability to communicate and be persuasive.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, John Thompson, who's now the chairman at Microsoft, when he was the CEO of Symantec, he always used to call himself the chief salesperson because of exactly that. He was always selling something, whether it was to customers, but definitely inside the company as well. So you've had a long, varied career path, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But what was it that attracted you to Etsy? And, I know Etsy's been going through some changes. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you took over as CEO?
Yeah, so after American Express, I took some time to really be patient and picky because I feel like I'm in my prime, and the thing I was solving for is, will my kids be really proud of me? I want this to be my keystone thing, and I'm blessed to have choice in life, and so I want that they will really look back and say, I'm really proud of my father for this. Etsy has an amazing mission, and we do something that I think is really important in the world. So in a world where automation is changing the nature of work and, changing the lives of so many people, creativity can't be automated. And so for 2 million people, we allow them to take their creativity and turn it into economic opportunity. And I think that's an incredibly important mission, and I think it's more relevant today than it's ever been. We have lightning in a bottle. We have a two-sided marketplace at scale, buyers and sellers. That almost never
familiar
happens.
with that.
It's kind of amazing, right? And it's an asset that I think we could have been doing more for. We could be doing more with our sellers to help them to scale and succeed. And so I thought it was an incredible opportunity, and am really privileged and feel grateful to have the chance to come and lead the company. The second part of your question, what were the biggest challenges?
Yeah, exactly. Because I know you went through sort of a reassessment of the model, of kind of what you were standing for, how to really think about the company and its place in the world. So maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a very difficult time when I came in, and my team and I went through a lot together over the past year. But I think philosophically, the biggest idea I brought to the company was that the marketplace, the core Etsy marketplace, was at the very early stages of growth, not at the late stages of growth. We were doing about $3 billion of sales, which in the world of e-commerce, I still think is relatively small compared to the opportunity. Our sellers sell 50 million products that are amazing and are relevant so often. And so we could be much, much bigger than $3 billion. So that belief, well, if you think that the marketplace is at the beginning stages, I asked the team, what are the fewest things we need to do well in order to grow this marketplace, in order to accelerate growth? And the challenge that we had been facing was that growth was slowing. Every quarter it slowed. And so the quarter that I joined, our sales, gross merchandise sales, grew by only 11%. And so in my first week, we inventoried everything we were doing at the company. And there were about 800 product initiatives in the pipeline or marketing initiatives in the pipeline.
How many?
800.
800.
For the company. We were spread a mile wide and an inch deep. And I asked how many of these are going to materially impact growth of our sales over the next 18 to 24 months. And it turned out a relatively small subset were going to do that. So we stopped doing everything else. And that was hard. We had about 150 people who'd worked for maybe 18 months to build something called Etsy Studio, which was a good idea. And it launched on Thursday. I started on Tuesday, and we redirected 146 of those employees off that project on Friday.
Wow.
We were launching in a bunch of new international markets. We stopped that. We project after project, hundreds of projects we stopped.
And what was the fallout of that inside the company? Were people like, who is this guy, Josh Silverman, and why is he doing this? How long did it take you to get the company to rally behind you in what you were doing? Because obviously the results today prove out, but that's like looking back. People don't know that when they start off. So what was what was that like inside the company
It
at
was
that
really
time?
hard. It was really hard. You
Yeah.
know, many of the employees, most of the employees were in new jobs within weeks of
Yeah.
me starting. So we moved a tremendous amount of cheese. Many of them said, this is terrific because I'm really glad we're focusing on doing fewer things better. But for a lot of them, it's a lot of change.
Yeah.
And what I said then was, we are doing this in order to accelerate growth and in order to serve our stakeholders better, primarily our sellers. And it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to prove it and live it. So to your question of how long it took, I'd say it took the better part of a year.
Yeah.
It took the better part of a year. Morale was hit pretty hard. We had a lot of attrition, but I kept saying to my team, they'll love us when we win. And when we prove that what we're saying translates to action. So I said, we're doing this to go faster and execute better. It happens that we're going to save money and cut costs, but this is not a cost-cutting exercise.
Yep.
We, within 4 months, had more than doubled the velocity of our product process. So we were shipping 2.5 times more product, and we were growing faster. So last quarter, we grew almost 20%.
Yeah.
Versus 11% 4 quarters before. So the team is seeing that. They're seeing that they're hearing the positive
That's got to
feedback
be
from
incredibly helpful too. I mean,
it
it
makes
always
all the
is sort of like
difference.
if you can get that first success, then it makes things easier.
Absolutely.
And it's fortunate that you had a couple of those because
It is. And, you know, your word fortunate is right. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of focus and great execution from the team who worked really hard, and there's some good luck along the way, too. And that definitely plays a role.
Yeah. And did you change your business model along the way as well? I remember reading, I think, some things about that in the New York Times article that came out, which I think really did a great job on looking at the totality of all you were tackling.
Yeah. Well, you know, we didn't change the business model. The business model is the same. I would say the difference is that we've really focused in on our core marketplace business and are putting a lot less attention on extensions, brand new businesses we could get into, because to me, any investment in a brand new business usually pales in comparison with just putting that energy against our core business where I think there's still so much potential. But I think the big question that the team had and that I have a passionate point of view about was, we want to be both a great citizen and a great business. And I believe that Etsy's business model is one where those two are completely joined up. We can be a great citizen and we can be a great business. And I think Etsy's intentions have always been outstanding.
Yeah.
What we've done is really worked hard to tie our intentions to outcomes and focus on outcomes.
Yeah.
And so we've picked 3 areas where we believe we can have big impact on our community. It's economic empowerment, diversity, and the environment. Economic empowerment, 2 million sellers who count on us every single day to help them grow their sales. And you know what? They don't get to have bad days and just, you know, miss targets. And, you know, they've got to deliver for their
whole
customers
life is
every
counting on it.
single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference to them. And so they deserve that we show up with the same level of intensity and focus on serving our customers. I believe we can do that best when we have a workforce that is really diverse. And we really focus on that. And the team has always focused on that. Our focus now is, I think, even stronger. So over half of the leaders of the company are female. Over half of the company is female. 2/3 of the senior executive team is female. Half the board is female. 32% of our engineering team is female. We're working really hard on other forms of diversity as well. I think that all of that matters in order for us to make great decisions, be innovative, and have a lot of empathy for the wide range of customers that we intend to serve. And the environment, we think we can achieve our mission with minimal or no impact on our environment, negative impact, so zero carbon footprint. And we've set ambitious goals around achieving those, and we're measuring and holding ourselves accountable to making steady progress, which we are. So,
Josh, I have to say, I love all that stuff. I mean, we're such kindred spirits. I mean, we believe in the same things, that we have an obligation for our businesses to be forces for good. And we're fortunate to be both in roles where our businesses actually can make a difference in the world. Not everybody has that opportunity to go and do that, but yeah, I love hearing what you're saying about those, and it has to inspire everyone at Etsy as well.
When they see us living it,
Yeah.
when they see us holding ourselves accountable to it, putting up metrics and demonstrating that we are investing in it and serious about not just wanting to get better, but holding ourselves accountable to get better, I think that's when people see that it's authentic.
Yeah.
And since I've known you, you have been authentically passionate about economic empowerment and, the underbanked.
Yeah.
And you've committed significant parts of your career to that, and diversity. And I know those are very deeply held values for you too. And I've seen you walk the walk on that. And I'm sure your team really feels it. I'm sure it makes a difference. In a world where our politics is so fraught, we need our corporate leaders to be able to step up and to demonstrate. And so that's where I think for Etsy, our individual mission is really important. But I also think showing that you can be a great business and a great citizen at the same time is critical. In order to do that, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard of execution.
Yep.
Being a good citizen does not let us off the hook one bit on our financial results. As soon as you say, well, we're not going to deliver good financial results because we're very focused on corporate citizenship, that's where you lose. And I don't think we need to, fortunately, with our business model, with your business model, we don't need to do that.
I totally agree. I don't think I say this frequently because I always talk about, our mission and our vision and our values, and we're trying to do the right thing in the world, drive financial health, focus on the underserved communities. And I always say that there's no dichotomy between creating great shareholder value and serving the segments of the population that, need us most with the best value. There's no disconnect on that. In fact, if you really are a customer champion, if you understand those segments, you can create value where no one else can do that and actually drive incremental shareholder value. So I don't think there's a dichotomy at all, and I'm a big believer in that as well. So, Josh, we can move to, because you've had such a long, impressive career, starting off as an entrepreneur, working in larger, incredibly well-known brands. I think even at one time, a couple of years ago, TechCrunch nominated you as one of the CEOs of the year for what you were doing. So most people would look at you and say, wow, what a great career. It's just been straight up and to the right. But you and I both know in a long career, that never, ever happens. Is there a moment that you can think of in your career or an event that you feel either defined your career or changed your trajectory in some way?
Yeah, gosh, a lot. And to your point, in every chapter of my career, there were days that looked really dark and really hard.
Yeah.
And, our families have been there with us and have lived that, and not a lot of other people always get to see it. I can think of a bunch. Let's see. So, kind of what made me at eBay, when I joined eBay, I was sent to the Netherlands to go see what we could do to fix the Netherlands, and which wasn't performing very well. And I discovered an online classified business that was competing with us and beating us. And at the time, eBay believed that classifieds as a model didn't work. And so my team and I did some scrappy research and demonstrated that if you were a buyer or seller in the Netherlands, you should almost always choose Marktplaats, this classified site, instead of eBay. It served its customers better than we did, which was a big eye-opening moment. And Meg, to her credit, Meg Whitman was the CEO at the time, said, okay, I've seen the data, I believe you. We should be big in classifieds. Josh, go buy that Marktplaats company for whatever it costs. So we went out and we bought that company, and it turned out it cost a lot. We paid 290 million euros for a business that had 10 million euros of revenue, 5 million euros of profit. It was expensive. In fact, it was the biggest acquisition that had been done in the Netherlands. And within months, what that did was it taught the leading publishing company in the Netherlands that they had really missed out. and that they should be much bigger in classifieds because publishing companies made, at the time, most of their money in classifieds. Anyway, what we faced then was this incredible assault from this massive media company in the Netherlands, which launched its own classifieds business that looked just like ours, but better. It had no fees. It had a better product, in my opinion. And then every unsold TV spot they had, every unsold radio spot they had, every unsold print ad they had focused on their site.
Yeah.
And they launched with 1 million live listings because they took every listing they had. Anyway, it was a very serious threat. And they were very dark days for me. I flew back to San Jose. I was living in the Netherlands. I flew back to San Jose and I had to show Meg, remember that company that I convinced us to buy that, we paid all that money for? Well, we're growing at this trajectory and our competitor is growing at this trajectory.
Yeah.
And as you know, in a two-sided marketplace, you're either the biggest or you've lost.
Yep.
And so we were about 6 months away from losing. And I was really concerned. And I had to go tell her this is what's happened. And then on the flight on the way home, I just thought to myself, okay, these are the moments that matter. And I wrote down on a sheet of paper, these are the 7 metrics that will define success. And I landed in Amsterdam on a Sunday. I called my team together on Monday morning. And I pulled my team together and I said, I know we've had a lot of conversations about role responsibility and career development. None of that matters. None of that matters right now. The next year will define for many of us, a moment in our life that's going to really matter.
Yeah.
So, Dennis, you own this, and Susan, you own that, and Mary, you own that metric. I gave each leader a metric, and I said, you've got a week. Come back to me with your plan for how you're going to, radically improve the business. And the team did an amazing, so we reorganized the entire company, got laser focused on a few things. And the team did an amazing job of innovating. And we challenged ourselves, and particularly all of the sacred cows.
Yeah.
All of the things that were so important to get the business to where it was today, we challenged. And many of those things we actually left behind and did something completely new. And the business dramatically accelerated growth. Things worked out great. And it was the proudest time. And going from the darkest time and the most competitive time became probably the proudest time of my career. And the people on that team have gone on to huge jobs. One of them runs a $50 billion company, now publicly traded company. Another one has been the head of SEO at some of the biggest brands in the world. So they've gone on to amazing things. And I think for everyone on the team, that was kind of a defining moment.
2 interesting thoughts come to mind. One is, it looks like you took that almost exact experience and applied it to Etsy, if you think about it. Here are the key things that matter.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters. Let's focus on that and deliver. And then the other thing that I think is really important for people to understand is when you're going through very difficult times, it's when leadership matters the most. And if you can work your way through that, it becomes a defining moment and a thing you look back on your career all the time. I had that same thing with Virgin Mobile where it was just fighting off one disaster after another. But that experience bonded our teams together. And, we still get together, Virgin Mobile employees, to talk about and reminisce about all the things we went through. So let me end this interview, which, by the way, I so appreciate your time. It's been great, with one last question. So the name of this program is Never Stand Still. And what it comes from is a lesson I learn almost every morning when I'm doing either Krav or boxing, which is the moment you stand still in front of an opponent or something, you get hit. And so my instructor always says, don't stand still. And I'm like, okay, now I remember. But it's painful to remember because you often get reminded of it. So as you look through your career, I think it'd be really interesting for people listening and watching right now. When was a time that you got hit in your career and got knocked down? And how did you manage to get back up and keep moving forward? Because I think that's the secret to all success. Do you mind talking about something like that?
Such a great question and such a good metaphor. You know, lots and lots of times along the way, but I think it was a lesson I learned kind of early. So in high school, I was at a traditional public school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and really bored and acting out in school and not performing very well. I remember myself as a B student, and my dad recently sent me my high school transcripts as he was clearing out his stuff, and I was giving myself way too much credit. I was a C+ student, and because I just struggled inside the structure of the school. And there was a non-traditional public school that was really set up as a school of last resort for kids that were really struggling. And they had a jazz program. And so I went over there to register just for jazz. And the school was so radically different than the traditional school I was in. I remember when you sign up at that school, at the traditional public school, you filled out a punch card with your top 28 choices, and they told you these are the 7 classes. You know, I walk into the cafeteria, and every teacher is sitting at a card table, and I walked up to Mike Moradian, and he said, "Hi, I'm Mike, not Mr. Moradian."
Yeah.
And I said, "What do you teach?" And he said, "I teach science, and at 2 o'clock, I'm thinking I might teach a chemistry class, but I don't know, some of the kids want to do 1 o'clock, and they want to do that, what works for you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And I immediately transferred all of my classes there. And it was the kind of school that, candidly, if you were a reasonably successful kid doing well enough, it wasn't socially okay to go to that school. It was an amazing choice for me, and it totally changed my trajectory. And a couple of, I ended up getting into, Brown, as you mentioned, only because Brown had never seen a kid from this school. Most of the kids from the school didn't apply to college, much less Ivy League schools. It was a very unusual place to come from, and I had created some unusual things. I was on the road 80% of the time, actually, in my senior year, because I was playing jazz on the road. And the chance to just go follow a passion and do something that feels right to you, particularly if it's not what everyone else is doing, rarely serves you wrong. I have found it's rarely served me wrong. But the other thing about that, it was a school that had very, very little structure. You basically had to pass what the state of Michigan required as competency exams. And however you got there, if you could do it, you could pass. And what I find is school presents you, in the American system typically, with all the information you need and then a set of questions.
Yeah.
And then you get out of school and it looks nothing like that. No one's defining the questions for you.
Yep.
You don't have all the information you need, and you don't even know what subset of the information you have. And you've got to just go and figure it out. And so having opportunities to go in much less structured environments and define your own path, for me, was very important.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Josh, I want to thank you again for the time. It's so nice to see you. And good luck at everything you're doing at Etsy.
Thank you. And likewise, great to see you.
Yeah.